Dear students, welcome to Trap for Rats, the class for postgraduates. This I would like to devote to my favorite teacher, Professor M.S. Ramachandran of medicine, who had passed away recently. Many a line that I talk is what I had learned from him. This is from the recent advances 23, and the list of authors is displayed on the screen. The references also would be these, along with WHO and others. I would advise you people to kindly go to Robbins. I mentioned the word Robbins purposely. Those days, the lung cancer used to be divided into just squamous cell carcinoma and adenocarcinoma. And some of them were large, so came a term of large cell carcinoma. And whenever large is mentioned, there has to be a small cell. So this was exactly the terminology. Just like you people have AML, ALL, CML, CLL. But all of us know that is not the classification. There have been many a change in terminology, oncology, medicine, and pathology, which you people shall incorporate in your answers. In this particular class, I shall be devoting to what the authors have highlighted, and I have taken many a good picture from the WHO as well as the net. A nice quote by Mark Twain. As I mentioned earlier, I am not going into the etiology of lung tumors. And look at the spate of tumors that come under the adenocarcinoma. It is no longer a simplistic word. The adenocarcinoma itself being divided again and again into many. So these are the terms which will be reflected in the pictures to come. I would like you people to kindly price it and change it according to the latest WHO that is available to you people. Close on the heels of the adenocarcinoma come the squamous cell carcinoma, large cell carcinoma with the neuroendocrine differentiation. That is how it should read. Adenosquamous carcinoma and sarcomatoid. Also, the authors have dealt with the staging, problems in diagnosis, and a mode of treatment that should be applied or approached with. Look at this picture over here. It denotes atypical adenomatous hyperplasia of the lung. Obviously, this could be missed in a sampling, a diagnosis, or even a radiology. The features are as given. Less than 5 millimeters with at least 2 areas showing such lesions. It could be because of atypical pneumocyte proliferation, well-defined, discrete. There is hardly any septal widening. And type 2 pneumocytes and Clara cells are implicated in its pathology. Increased N ratio and hobnail cells could be seen. Probably these people could see in this picture. Look at the hobnail pattern of it. There is hardly any of the interstitial space. There is a subtle difference, however, between the alveolus and the acinus, which we shall be seeing. So this is atypical adenomatous hyperplasia. Minimally invasive adenocarcinoma. The tumor itself is less than 3 centimeters. Focal invasion should be more than 5 millimeters, that is 0.3 or 0.5 centimeters. Angulated tumorness. So you find that there is a kind of bending and an angulation that could be seen amidst the tumors. Obviously, there is a lack of lymphovascular or pleural invasion. No tumor necrosis. And adenocarcinoma in situ diagnosis can be made only after thorough sampling of the entire tissue available. This is a paradox. Not until recently, the bronchoalveolar carcinoma was an accepted term and it was repeatedly asked university question. But now it is being replaced with all these terms such as adenocarcinoma in situ, lipidic predominant adenocarcinoma, minimally invasive, invasive mucinous adenocarcinoma, invasive adenocarcinoma with lipidic component. I would like you people to kindly memorize it. This is from Recent Advances 23. This is what I wanted to tell you people. I'm having the normal alveoli on my upper left and the tumor on my lower right. The tumor is composed of flow columnar cells which are showing a hobnail pattern and they are all arranged along the basement membrane. There doesn't seem to be any kind of invasion. They are supposed to be originating from the type 2 pneumocytes or the Clara cells. This particular term, however, has been discontinued, and I told you the alternatives in the previous slide. The problem here is the subtypes mentioned in the previous slide. One can merge imperceptibly with another, and there can be a continuum of lesions. Now, what you people are seeing is an acinar pattern of adenocarcinoma. It displays tumor cells in a glandular pattern and they are infiltrating a desmoplastic stroma. The tumor cells are found infiltrating over here. In some areas, they may be back-to-back in arrangement. It is the most common type in minimally invasive adenocarcinoma. Coming to the difference between an alveolus and an acinesis, alveolus, which is found in the normal lung, it has got thin fibrovascular septae with cells on either side, facilitating the exchange of gases. Whereas in an acinus, you have got acinus in the salivary gland, any other glandular structure, you find that the cells will be lining one side only. That shall be the histological difference between an acinus and an alveolus. So, acinar pattern of adenocarcinoma, though it appears solid or cribriform in some areas, I'm able to very clearly make out the acini. Glandular structures, all these things have been mentioned. And it is infiltrating a desmoplastic stroma. Another one is a papillary predominant adenocarcinoma. In other organs, it will be a bit of a trouble, such as breast. But here it is quite straightforward. It is the most commonly diagnosed type of lung cancer. I'm able to see multiple finger-like projections. In some areas, they appear as islands because they have been cut across. It usually occurs in the peripheral region of the lungs. And it is classified under grade 2 tumors. More aggressive, non-invasive or non-mucinous adenocarcinoma, which is invasive. The prognosis is guarded. Micropapillary predominant adenocarcinoma. What are papillae? Finger-like projections into a lumen. So true luminal structures with a fibrovascular probe. Sometimes they can be cut across, they may appear to be floating. The growth pattern is almost similar to an acinar. It is inalveolar, and I'm finding some of the papillae which are appearing detached thanks to the section cutting. Tufts and rings of intraalveolar detached papillae can be seen. The stromal response is minimal. However, there can be widespread lymphovascular invasion. The prognosis is worst. Micropapillary predominant adenocarcinoma. And this is yet another picture of it. I am able to find multiple floating islands, and this is a stroma with not much of a reaction. Solid adenocarcinoma. Earlier, my professor used to say, whenever there is a solid carcinoma, it has to be either a squamous cell carcinoma or an adenocarcinoma. But now the truth is otherwise. The major tumor in this case is composed of solid sheets. At this magnification, I cannot appreciate further. There are nests and sheets of cells. There is minimal glandular differentiation. If at all you want to demonstrate mucin, you will have to do a special stain. And it has to be done represented in at least two fields. Immunophenotyping can be done. And sometimes it can be mistaken for a non-keratinizing squamous cell carcinoma or a large cell carcinoma. This is yet another picture of the same solid adenocarcinoma. I'm finding nests of tumor cells, very beautifully arranged, something like a pheochromocytoma pattern that I'm seeing over here. It lacks the other patterns such as papillary, acinar, micropapillary, etc. And the marker shall be TTF1 or napsin A. It is an aggressive tumor with a poor prognosis. Lower frequency of EGFR mutations, higher prevalence of KRAS mutations. And this is the reference of the article. Some people have done amazing work. I would like you people to kindly go to these references and see what they have done. It is really worth it. Bronchiolo-alveolar carcinoma, as I had mentioned earlier, is not in vogue. That is not in practice. It is almost a tumor in situ. But here, I would make use of this particular diagram. You are seeing a slender fibrovascular septae, and I'm finding the cells on either side. That is the pattern of an alveolus and an acinus. And incidentally, this is a hazy area that can be mistaken for a pneumonic consolidation. Invasive mucinous adenocarcinoma with a lipidic pattern of growth. Here again, lipidic, the word is used because it is confined and it appears to be growing along the basement membrane. However, there shall be invasion. There shall be mucinous pools. And it replaces the term mucinous bronchiolo-alveolar carcinoma. Morphologically, clinically, and genetically, it is different from a non-mucinous adenocarcinoma. The mutations are KRAS mutations and EML4, ALK translocation. What is ALK? It is not alkaline. Just think about it. We shall come to it. The problem is it can be mistaken for a metastasis. Again, my professor used to say, when it is an adenocarcinoma of the lung, you cannot say whether it is a primary or a second unless proven otherwise. So here again, the mucinous adenocarcinoma in the periphery, adenocarcinoma in the periphery, and it appears like a consolidation. Solid, bubbling, pneumonic consolidation. Minimal cytological atypia. Here polarity is well maintained. And nowadays you find that mucinous cystadenocarcinoma, signet ring cell, clear cell terms have been abolished. That is why I ask you people to kindly keep abreast with the changing terminology in WHO. Colloid carcinoma, we had seen it elsewhere. You find that there can be small cells or groups of cells, islands of cells in lakes and sea of mucin. They are usually of the goblet or the columnar type. Fetal adenocarcinoma. The fetal adenocarcinoma, one look at it, I will say that it is immature. Probably it looks like a lung of atelectasis which has not expanded. A fetal adenocarcinoma. And it is lined by tall columnar cells which have got a vacuolated cytoplasm. Some books say that it has got a secretory face-like appearance. As you people see very well over here, I'm finding tall columnar cells with a vacuolated cytoplasm. Cribriform and tubular structures, columnar cells with clear cytoplasm, resembling fetal lung tubules. Morullar metaplasia can be seen as a case of endometrioid adenocarcinoma. It occurs in the younger age, B-catenin mutation is positive. And coming to one of the last of the adenocarcinomata, the enteric adenocarcinoma. Enteric itself means either you find tall columnar cells or you find goblet cells. There is an enteric differentiation. It can be acinar, it can be cribriform. Again, using the word acinus, it is not alveolus. Look at this one, it is an acinus with tumor cells on one side. Primary enteric adenocarcinoma of the lung, it has also been referred to as pulmonary enteric adenocarcinoma. Extremely rare tumor, and it has got a resemblance to the colorectal carcinoma. Obviously, if you are given a history of Duke's classification, then we'll be making a diagnosis of a colorectal carcinoma. Moderate to well-differentiated gland, sometimes there can be a cribriform pattern. Eosinophilic, tall, columnar cells, that might be pseudostratification. The next group is what we are going to talk about, the squamous cell carcinoma. As I had mentioned earlier, fundamentally it used to be adenocarcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, large cell carcinoma, small cell carcinoma. I only hope that life was so simple. This is a very clear undergraduate slide which was taken for a different purpose. But this is not what I wanted. Sometimes the squamous dysplasia can be mistaken for a squamous cell carcinoma. The problems are again, a solid carcinoma can be mistaken for a small cell variant of a squamous cell carcinoma and also for a small cell carcinoma. Adenocarcinomas are positive for TTF1, negative for P63. Squamous cell carcinoma will be negative for neuroendocrine, whereas small cell carcinomas will be positive for neuroendocrine markers. Metastatic and primary lung carcinomas again can be difficult to be differentiated from each other. Look at this one. So this is a lung tumor. This is an adenocarcinoma actually found towards the periphery of the lung and positive for ALK. We have been talking about squamous cell carcinoma. Earlier was an undergraduate slide. Now look at it for your eyes only. I hope you are able to recollect this one. We shall see what it is. In this one, I am able to find well-differentiated islands of squamous cells, but even then, there can be some kind of glandular differentiation. It can be a pseudogland or it can be an adenosquamous. But then look at the cells on either side. I would like you to compare the cells on the side with this. Supposing you are given a slide like this, and you have got only these in the field. I don't think it is no different from this. So it can be an undifferentiated or a small cell carcinoma, and I will not be bold enough to call this a squamous cell carcinoma. For your eyes only. Roger Moore over here. Large cell carcinoma. And to this, the terminology neuroendocrine has been added. It often shows large cells with neuroendocrine differentiation. Neuroendocrine, organoid, carcinoid, etc. They all have got one specific thing, pattern. You'll be finding that the tumor cells are in nests or in cords or islets. So this is called an organoid pattern because they elaborate a lot of substances which are being directly released into the blood, just like an endocrine gland. They will be positive for chromogranin or synaptophysin. CD56 is positive. Mitosis can be 10/10 high power field. There can be occasional mitosis. It is said to be associated with Epstein-Barr virus. Dear students, sometimes EBV itself can be asked as a question. And the differential diagnosis here is atypical carcinoid. So we had seen squamous cell carcinoma, adenocarcinoma, then a large cell neuroendocrine carcinoma. And this again, you know the problems of the large cell. As I told you, in some areas it can be clearly squamoid, whereas here it is appearing more mucinous to me. The cells will be large, anaplastic, lot of mitotic figures. So it can again be mistaken with the term adenosquamous, but better with an anaplastic carcinoma. Because look at the cells, the pleomorphism that is seen over here. The picture is from WebPath and this is from Elsevier. Thanks to all. And there can be a combination of this, adenosquamous. Nowadays, this term is haunting many a pathologist. Where we get a tumor at the junction or in the lung, etc., adenosquamous. So here I'm finding polygonal cells and they are in sheets. In some areas, however, I'm able to see a glandular architecture. Sometimes the problem is there can be benign bronchial glands which can be entrapped. There can be squamous dysplasia in an adenocarcinoma. And also, there is a different term called the mucoepidermoid carcinoma that should be differentiated. The immunohistochemical markers are for adenocarcinoma, TTF1 and CK7. And for squamous cell carcinoma, P63 and CK5 or 6. 7 is negative. What is the mode of treatment of non-small cell lung cancers? Look at the term. Just like non-seminomatous germ cell tumors, this is a term that is being used. Now, what we should do is for the diagnosis and the staging, probably suspect a lung cancer, do a chest radiography. If it is going to be abnormal, then go to the central labs, put them for cytology, then a bronchothoracic biopsy can be done, transthoracic biopsy, and ultimately a lung cancer can be diagnosed. On the other hand, radiology on the clinical side, CT guided thoracoscopy, thoracotomy, and then a lung cancer. This has to be the mode of approach for a diagnosis and further treatment. So this table is just to show you what are all the various stages and why such a diagnosis is important. You find that different tumors react in different ways to various drugs and all cannot be given the same treatment. The radiotherapy and chemotherapy shall vary. You can just go through. Now in this particular slide, I would like to emphasize upon epidermal growth factor receptor and tyrosine kinase inhibitor. There is a modality of treatment called therapeutic target. That is, you attack the particular cell you want to and not the rest. And how do you arrive at this particular one? When studying it, they found that epidermal growth factor receptor detection is not particularly useful. And so what they wanted was the next line. So this is a picture of an advanced non-small cell carcinoma of the lung. And in this, EGFR mutation testing was done. So the next level of testing should be the EGFR gene mutation. And when it turns out to be positive, they start a line of treatment. This is called the first line of treatment. So here I find that they do a first line of treatment with these particular drugs, after which it is compared with the second line of treatment, and so on it goes on. So you find that a lot of analysis is being done and the outcome is being studied. There are two bodies which studied the non-small cell lung cancers. One is IPAS, ERASER Pan-Asia study, and the other is EURAT, European population was studied in this. In one, they found that between these two drugs, the success rate was as much as 23 times, whereas in the other, it was almost equal. So such a difference is there, and therefore more and more studies will be made into it. I would like you people to kindly draw this schematic diagram in your answers. And targeted therapy can also be a question for you people. You can make use of this elsewhere in your paper. So this is a particular article that is giving you the entire reference of it. I would like you people to go through it, and this is the source of it. Anaplastic lymphoma kinase pathway. That is why I said it is not alkaline kinase. Anaplastic lymphoma kinase. So there is a target molecule over here. N terminal, C terminal over here. And this is EC and IC. you find that there is a targeted domain that is over here. It is called because of addiction dependence. There is an area for tyrosine kinase. And the therapeutic tools that can be used can be peptides or tyrosine kinase inhibitors. If it is in this region, use the peptides. If it is in this region, use the tyrosine kinase inhibitors. This particular flow diagram is related to the earlier article that I had shown you people. I would like you people to kindly memorize and draw. And what are the modes of treatment? This again is given in recent advance 23, and I have designed this flow diagram for you people. So non-small cell lung cancer, you find that if the mutation is positive, you give the first line of treatment. If it is anaplastic lymphoma kinase positive, you give this treatment. If it is of a non-squamous histology, this is the treatment. And if it is of a squamous histology, this is a line of treatment. The second line of treatment will be composed of these drugs. So this indicates a progressive disease over here, whereas the first blue line, it indicates the histological diagnosis that is made. So nowadays, when it comes to management, it has to be pathological, molecular diagnosis. And sometimes the management of non-small cell metastatic tumors also will fall in this. Similar tables are given elsewhere. I would like you people to again memorize it, not for our particular answer. This table is useful for us in a number of lesions. The breast cancer, the lung cancer, kidney, CML, GIST, etc. The expansions are given over here. Please try to make use of this particular chart. Now, what are the key points in today's presentation? The term bronchoalveolar carcinoma is obsolete. And whatever histological subtype is predominant, that will determine the prognosis and the progress of the disease. Entire, if it is going to be more than or less than 3 centimeters, the entire lesion will have to be sampled to distinguish and to diagnose a minimal invasion. And look for rarer subtypes when the entire specimen, a lobectomy, pneumonectomy, etc., has been done. And there has to be a molecular plus pathological analysis and diagnosis. Various connective tissue stains can be done for pleural invasions. Bronchial washings and brushings, which we are reporting upon, are inadequate. Newer therapy have got different side effects, and hence we will have to make a specific diagnosis. Repeat biopsy by itself will not be useful, but we'll have to go in for molecular analysis. That is a key point that is given in this particular article. A Bend of the Road, the story by Nicholas Spark. And then I hope you people are able to identify this old friend of ours, Helen Keller. A bend in the road is not the end of the road unless you fail to make the right turn. Lucas Gracias. I hope you people can make a diagnosis. What is this one? And this has got some similarity to this. Thank you.